The first rays of morning sunlight hadn't yet burned away the dew when Michael Reynolds realized something was wrong. Very wrong. He stood at his kitchen window, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips, staring in disbelief at the pristine black BMW now occupying nearly half of this carefully maintained driveway. It wasn't just the unauthorized parking that made his blood begin to simmer. It was who owned the car. Karen Henderson, the neighborhood's self-appointed queen of suburban passive-aggressiveness, had struck again. Michael had lived at 1247 Maple Grove for 15 years. He knew every inch of his property like the back of his hand. The driveway wasn't just concrete and asphalt. It was a meticulously maintained space that reflected his pride in homeownership. Smooth, freshly sealed each spring, lined with precision, a testament to his meticulous nature as a mechanical engineer. And now Karen's BMW sat there like an invasive species, its midnight black paint gleaming with an almost mocking brilliance. This wasn't the first time Karen had tested his patience. Last summer, she complained to the homeowners association about his maple tree's branches supposedly encroaching on her perfectly manicured lawn. The tree had been there decades before Karen had even moved into the neighborhood, a fact she conveniently ignored. Then there was the incident with the garbage cans, which she claimed were improperly positioned during collection day. But this was a whole new level of neighborhood warfare. Michael set down his coffee, the ceramic mug making a sharp click against the granite countertop. He could see her house from here, a pale yellow monstrosity with white trim, surrounded by gardens that looked more like military formations than natural landscape. Karen's husband, Tom, was a retired military officer, and her landscaping reflected that disciplined approach. The BMW's position wasn't accidental. It was strategic. By parking at such an angle, she was effectively blocking nearly two-thirds of his driveway, making it impossible for him to move his own vehicle without confrontation. He remembered the last neighborhood meeting where Karen had cornered him, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Michael, we really need to discuss the neighborhood aesthetic," she had said, her perfectly manicured nails gesturing dramatically. "Some of us take pride in maintaining property values." The unspoken accusation was clear. He wasn't doing his part. But Michael knew the truth. His property was immaculate. His lawn was cut with precision, his flower beds were weeded, and his house was always in top condition. The difference was simple. He believed in a natural, lived-in approach to landscaping, while Karen treated her property like a sterile museum exhibit. Now her BMW represented more than just an illegally parked vehicle. It was a declaration of war. Michael walked to his front door, stepped outside, and took a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The cool breeze did little to calm the storm brewing inside him. Karen had made a critical mistake this time. She had crossed a line, and he was going to make sure she understood exactly what that meant. His mind was already racing the possibilities. This wasn't going to be another neighborhood complaint or passive-aggressive note. This was going to be a response she would never forget. The next 48 hours became a masterclass in strategic planning. Michael wasn't impulsive. His engineering background had taught him the value of precision, of calculating every possible outcome before taking action. He spent hours researching local parking regulations, neighborhood bylaws, and homeowners association rules. Each document became a potential weapon in his arsenal against Karen's brazen invasion of his property. But nothing provided the clear-cut violation he needed. Karen, it seemed, was maddeningly meticulous in skirting the edge of legality. His colleagues at Reynolds Engineering would have been shocked to see him like this. Michael was typically the level-headed project manager, the guy who solved complex mechanical design challenges with cool rationality. But this was personal. This was about respect, about boundaries. On Wednesday evening, he found himself in his garage workshop, surrounded by an array of tools that spoke to his professional expertise. Blueprints from his latest engineering project were pinned to one wall, intricate mechanical designs that represented millions in potential contracts. But his attention was focused elsewhere. A collection of rocks sat on his workbench. Not just any rocks, carefully selected specimens from his recent hiking trip to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Smooth river stones, jagged granite chunks, perfectly sized stones that seemed almost designed by nature for a very specific purpose. Michael picked up a particularly interesting piece, a granite rock about the size of a softball, with a perfectly flat bottom and a sharp, angular top. He turned it over in his hands, feeling its weight, its potential. An engineer's mind was always about understanding potential energy, about knowing exactly how an object might interact with its environment. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Through the garage window, he could see Karen's house. The yellow paint seemed to mock him, a beacon of suburban conformity. Her BMW remained parked precisely where she had left it, a territorial marker in their unspoken war. His phone buzzed. A text from his best friend, Derek, a criminal defense attorney who had heard about the ongoing saga. "Don't do anything stupid," the message read. Michael smiled. Stupid was the last thing he intended to be. His plan was taking shape, methodical and precise. Like every successful engineering project, this would require careful planning and understanding of variables and a dash of creative problem solving. The rocks weren't just rocks anymore. They were potential solutions, instruments of a carefully calculated response, somewhere between his professional world of blueprints and precise measurements and his personal battlefield of suburban tension. Michael Reynolds was about to demonstrate that revenge was indeed a dish best served with engineering precision. Thursday morning arrived with a precision that seemed almost conspiratorial. Michael had barely slept, his mind cycling through contingencies and potential consequences. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. He watched from behind his living room curtains as Tom Henderson left for work, his silver sedan rolling down the street with military-like punctuality. Karen's BMW remained exactly where she had parked it 2 days earlier, a provocative monument to her suburban entitlement. Michael's hands were steady as he prepared his carefully selected stones. Each one was chosen with the same meticulous attention he would give to selecting components for a complex mechanical design. They weren't random projectiles. They were calculated instruments of retribution. The first stone was a smooth river rock, about the size of a baseball, with a weight that promised impact without leaving an immediately traceable mark. Its surface was a mottled gray, perfect for blending into the early morning shadows. As dawn broke, Michael moved with a calculated calm that would have impressed his engineering team. He understood trajectories, understood force and momentum. This wasn't about destruction. It was about sending a message. The first stone arced through the air with mathematical precision, striking the BMW's driver's side door with a muted thud. No shattering glass, no dramatic destruction, just a carefully placed impact that would leave its mark. One stone, then another, each placed with surgical accuracy. By the time the first neighbors began to stir, Michael was back inside, his morning coffee steaming, watching through the curtains with a mixture of satisfaction and calculated anticipation. The BMW now bore a constellation of small dents and chips, each one a silent testament to his frustration. His phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "I hope you know what you're doing." Michael didn't respond. He knew exactly what he was doing. The neighborhood held its collective breath. Karen would return soon, and when she did, the first act of their suburban warfare would be complete. In the distance, you could hear the faint sound of an approaching car. The BMW's owner was returning home, and Michael Reynolds was ready for the next phase of his meticulously planned revenge. The moment Karen discovered the damage, the entire neighborhood knew about it. Her scream cut through the quiet suburban morning like a siren, high-pitched wail of rage and disbelief that sent birds scattering from nearby trees and dogs barking in a chain reaction of alarm. Michael watched from his living room window, his face a mask of carefully practiced neutrality. Within minutes, Karen was storming across her perfectly manicured lawn, her designer workout clothes a blur of expensive fabric and barely contained fury. She stopped short of Michael's property line, her hands gesticulating wildly as she began to scream accusations that carried clearly across the meticulously trimmed front yards. "You did this," she shrieked, pointing dramatically at her now dented BMW. "I know it was you, Michael Reynolds." Michael stepped onto his front porch, the picture of calm composure. Years of professional meetings had taught him the art of maintaining a neutral expression, of controlling every subtle muscle movement. He raised an eyebrow, the epitome of calculated innocence. "I'm not sure what you're talking about, Karen," he called back, his voice level and measured. Tom Henderson arrived home early, summoned by his wife's dramatic outburst. A retired military logistics officer, he approached the situation with a different methodology. While Karen was all emotional volatility, Tom was systematic, methodical. "We're calling the police," Tom announced, pulling out his phone. The neighborhood began to gather. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down. The Johnson twins from across the street. Everyone knew Karen. Everyone had a complicated relationship with her legendary micromanagement of neighborhood affairs. Michael's mind raced through potential scenarios. The police would need evidence, proof, and he had been careful, oh so careful, in his approach. What Karen didn't know was that Michael had anticipated this moment. The stones had been carefully selected not just for their impact, but for their ability to leave minimal traceable evidence. Each one was common to the local landscape, picked from hiking trails miles away from the neighborhood. As the police cruiser pulled up, Michael allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The game was about to get interesting. The officer who stepped out looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Another suburban dispute. Another morning of petty neighborhood drama. "Mr. Reynolds," the officer called, "we're going to need to ask you a few questions." Michael stepped forward, ready to play his next carefully calculated move. Officer Ryan Martinez was not impressed by suburban drama. With 15 years on the force, he'd seen every possible variation of neighborhood conflict, and Michael Reynolds looked like exactly the type of professional who knew how to walk right up to the line without crossing it. Mr. Reynolds, Martinez began, his notebook already open. Can you account for your whereabouts this morning? Michael's response was immediate and practiced. I was home, working from my home office. I have several conference calls scheduled with our engineering firm's international clients. He gestured toward his home office, visible through the large front window. The room was a testament to his professional life, meticulously organized with multiple computer monitors and a wall of project blueprints. Karen hovered nearby, her face a storm of frustration. He did this, she insisted, pointing at her damaged BMW. Look at those dents. This is vandalism. The officer examined the vehicle carefully. The dents were precisely placed, damage that suggested calculation rather than random destruction. Each mark was strategic, causing aesthetic damage without compromising the car's fundamental functionality. Tom Henderson stood silent, his military training evident in his rigid posture. He was observing, analyzing, waiting for an opportunity to interject with precise information. Martinez noticed something peculiar. The dents were too perfect, too deliberate. This wasn't random vandalism. This was something else entirely. Do you have any security cameras, Mr. Reynolds? The officer asked, his tone neutral. Michael smiled slightly. As a matter of fact, I do. Would you like to review the footage? The neighborhood watched, transfixed. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down inched closer, desperately trying to catch every detail. The Johnson twins whispered to each other, documenting every moment of the unfolding drama on their phones. What none of them knew was that Michael had prepared for this moment with the same precision he applied to his professional engineering projects. The security camera footage would tell exactly the story he wanted it to tell, which was to say virtually nothing at all. Derek, his attorney friend, had coached him well. Provide access, be cooperative, but never volunteer unnecessary information. Tom Henderson finally spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. This is about more than just a few dents on a car, isn't it? Michael said nothing, but his smile, slight and controlled, spoke volumes. The investigation was just beginning, and Michael Reynolds was 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. The Homeowners Association meeting became the ultimate arena of suburban warfare. Michael sat calmly at the long conference table, his engineering portfolio subtly displayed beside him, a reminder of his professional standing in the community. Karen vibrated with barely contained rage, her perfectly pressed blazer armor of suburban aggression. Mr. Reynolds, the association president, began. We reviewed all evidence regarding the incident with Mrs. Henderson's vehicle. The room held its breath. What they didn't know was that Michael had spent weeks preparing. His meticulously gathered documentation revealed a startling truth. Karen had been systematically violating multiple neighborhood bylaws for years. Parking infractions, boundary encroachments, repeated violations of landscaping regulations. The security camera footage, carefully edited, showed nothing incriminating about the BMW's damage. Instead, it revealed a pattern of Karen's increasingly aggressive neighborhood tactics. Tom Henderson, sitting beside his wife, looked increasingly uncomfortable. As a retired military officer, he understood strategy, and Michael had just executed a masterful operation. Furthermore, Michael continued, his voice calm and professional, I have documentation showing that Mrs. Henderson's vehicle was illegally parked across my property line on multiple occasions. Each instance is a direct violation of our neighborhood's parking guidelines. Karen's face transformed. The confident smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of dawning horror. The association president reviewed the documents. Photographs, dated logs, precise measurements, everything documented with engineering-level precision. It appears, the president said slowly, that Mrs. Henderson has some explaining to do. The final blow came not from Michael's words, but from the collective realization of the neighborhood. For years, Karen had positioned herself as the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer. Now she was being held to the same exacting standards she had imposed on everyone else. Derek, Michael's attorney friend, had helped craft the strategy, not revenge, not destruction, but a surgical exposure of Karen's repeated infractions. The BMW's dents became almost irrelevant. Michael had transformed a moment of potential conflict into a comprehensive dismantling of Karen's neighborhood authority. As the meeting concluded, Michael packed his documents with the same methodical precision he applied to his engineering projects. He had won not through aggression, but through preparation, documentation, and an ironclad understanding of the rules. Karen and Tom left in stony silence. The neighborhood dynamics had fundamentally shifted. Michael Reynolds smiled. Sometimes justice was best served cold and with mathematical precision.